Welcome back to the Spread Show, a podcast that talks about management, technology, a little bit about work, a little bit about Generation Z, as our founders and a majority of our team members are part of this generation. And in today's episode, I'm very excited because I'm going to be talking and bringing insightful ideas to the table with a person who is a podcast host. It's the COP27 Youth Delegate representing the UAE in Egypt. He's a founder of Entrepreureka. He's the youth leader of Middle East Expo in 2020. That's just a little bit of a summary, but I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. And thank you so much for being here.
You didn't say my name though.
Who are you?
Yes, I am Mahreen Munir. Thank you very much for having me.
If you want to just introduce a little bit yourself from your own perspective, like a little bit of these things that I mentioned, and who are you?
Okay, putting me on the spot. But yeah, my name is Mahreen Munir, and yes, I do run a podcast. It's called Karak with Mahreen, where we talk about culture, society, philosophy, psychology. It has a lot to do with how culture shapes who we are. And other than that, some of my other experiences have been in the debating and public speaking field. So that's why I was a youth delegate at COP27. I'm also very much into entrepreneurship. So I have experience in founding and running an organization called Entrepreureka, which was all about empowering young entrepreneurs. So yeah, that's just a little description of what I've done.
Nice. And just to give like a little bit of a timeline, let's say, for this conversation so that we're not lost. But Ideally, we're going to just start a little bit with work challenges in relation a little bit to our generation and how we face that.
Yeah.
And then we would go a little bit as well to leadership. Leadership, that's something that you kind of experienced already, and all of us in our relationships or friendships or even the work that we have some kind of leadership experience, either being the leader or leading someone. And so that's just a little bit. But anyway, I just wanted you to kind of go over a little bit, like, why are you doing your podcast now?
So the podcast has been an opportunity for me to touch on topics that really interest me, that maybe I haven't studied in depth, but I have the opportunity to learn from other people's experiences. So by meeting all these different types of people and learning about their experiences when it comes to discrimination, when it comes to finding a job, and when it comes to navigating the cultures, South Asian cultures. So all these different things, I think just learning from those experiences has been my biggest motivation for the podcast. That's a little bit about why I started and why I'm continuing.
Yeah, and that's very interesting because in the end of the day, like, it's about communication, right? You like a lot.
Yeah, I love not talking to people. I love meeting people, and this is like the easiest, the most efficient way for me to meet new people, because most people, especially in Dubai, are very willing to come on your podcast, no matter what level of following they're on. People here are very open to collaborating, which I really appreciate. So even when I had 0 followers and I was contacting, of course I didn't contact major influencers, but even micro influencers, micro content creators, people who don't know anything about me because I didn't really have a social media presence, they were still willing to be on the podcast just because I crafted an email that explained it in a very concise but clear manner. And adding a personal element to the email always works, like introducing yourself very briefly and introducing an aspect of you that can relate to the other person. So if the other person talks a lot about Islam, I mentioned that I'm a Muslim in the email. If the other person talks a lot about South Asian problems, I mentioned that I'm a Pakistani. If the other person talks a lot about being an expat in Dubai, I mentioned that I was born and raised here. So that has helped me a lot in contacting people. But yeah, I think this was the best way for me to meet new people, and it was the most efficient way.
No, interesting. And this like kind of create a rapport, right, with the person on the other side. Because what we see nowadays, like a lot of people, they just go and they start spamming a lot of other like influencers or even like normal people just to come on your podcast or to have a meeting or to network or something. But then they don't even give the reason for the person to join, right?
Yeah, you need to build some sort of connection with the person because like, they don't know you. Like they have no idea who you are, and they're probably getting lots of messages from lots of different people, especially because podcasts are booming today.
Yeah.
So adding some level of a personal element to it really
help
goes a
you.
long way.
Yeah, nice. I think like, especially that we're talking about this kind of things that, let's say, reach out to people online and everything. I know that in Entrepreureka, you had like, it was mainly an online organization, right? With a lot of interns, and you guys would also reach out to people online and everything, right? So I just wanted can you explain a little bit for us what is an Entrepreureka?
So basically, Entrepreureka, the name, it was very difficult for people to pronounce it. I realized later on, but it was
Yeah, I can see I'm struggling.
yeah, that was a mistake on my part, but it was a combination of two words, entrepreneurship and eureka. So eureka is this concept that when you get an idea, this phenomenon of just suddenly getting an idea, that's eureka. It's like it's an exclamation, eureka. So I combined those two words together to showcase that this organization is about creativity and entrepreneurship and innovation. So what it did was we built a team, and we targeted, because it was built in COVID, so it was all online, and we targeted young students all around the world who want to get into the entrepreneurship field, who want to understand about businesses more. So we would host like business challenges. Those students would be paired with a company, and they would have to tackle a challenge of that company. So they would be given some sort of a case study, and they come up with a solution for it, and the winners would get like an internship with the company. So these were really young, like 15, 16-year-olds. They don't get as much exposure to internships. So the main intention was to give them more of that exposure at a young age. That was the whole
That's really
idea.
cool. That's really cool. And this was during COVID, right? Or?
Yeah, it was during COVID. So it was in, I think, end of 2019, I think we kind of started the launch of the idea, and 2020 was our main.
And how many people you had working with you, let's say, in the close team?
So initially it was just 3 of us, and that team evolved and changed so much. So by the end, the first team that I had, none of those team members were there anymore in the end. So eventually the solid team, we were a group of 7 people. And then we had like 20 interns who helped in multiple different departments of the team. And they did like a summer internship. But 7 people were the core team members.
Okay, cool. I'm asking this because I wanted us to kind of dive in a little bit about how is the dynamics of a team. Because I would imagine like everyone would be like very young, right? And I wanted to dive a little bit more in these dynamics of having like such a young team. Because for example, in Spreed, we have, let's say, we are reaching around 30 team members now, and our average age is 22, 23 years old. So it's just kind of, how you create a culture in that team that kind of actually moves people, that inspire people, right?
Yeah.
We say that like even in Spreed is not like just a workplace, but it's a culture. Is something that to be there, we need all to breathe the same air. We need also to have kind of a similar mindset, not in terms of skills, but in terms of how we're going to approach life, work, this balance, right?
For sure.
So I just wanted to ask you, in your experience, especially dealing with this generation and with all of these young people working with you, how did you find them? Like, did you think that, I don't know, they are not there for the challenge that they have, they're less resilient, or you have like a very optimistic view?
So because my team members changed a lot, but in the end, my core team were a solid group of 7 who were extremely committed. But in the beginning, I did face a lot of challenges in recruiting the best team members. And because we are young, we are in school, we are taking up lots of different projects, like so many different opportunities come to you in school. There's this competition, there's this project. So I did face problems in the beginning where some team members would join and barely do any work and not be committed and join a few meetings and then slack off. So there were those challenges, especially when you're a young person and you're still figuring out things. So you say yes to almost everything. So that was a particular challenge for me. But what I did notice eventually when I built my core team and everyone was fully committed, was the best way for them to align with the goals and the values of the organization was based just communication. I think young people love it when you give them some level of space to talk, to be creative, to give some ideas. They cannot always just take a bunch of orders. And in my team, in every meeting that we had in the beginning, I would talk about the updates, what each department is doing, how it's going. And after those updates, I would talk about things that I want to do for the next week or for the next month that I want us to achieve. So I'm thinking of hosting this challenge by the end of these 2 months. These are my ideas. This is what I think y'all can do. But what are your ideas? I think that creating that space for people to talk made it so much easier for our team to connect well with each other. And this may be very generic, but it was so true in my organization, because eventually I remember there were some team members who were too shy, who would not really say much, and who would be like, oh, no, I like this, let's go ahead with this. Or even when they would not like it, they would not talk a lot. They would just say a little bit like, yeah, I don't like this element, maybe we could change. They would not be that vocal. But as this process of promoting ideas and asking them, give me feedback, then I remember in the end of not in the end, but later stages of Entrepreureka, whenever we would have meetings, sometimes it would go a little too long because everyone had so many ideas to discuss, and a lot of times we would even have conflicts, but managing those conflicts was something else. I think that was one of the main techniques for us to unite and stay committed to the organization.
I mean, that's something that is very interesting, because I was reading some researches, and what I could see is that the biggest challenge that, let's say, companies or organizations, or let's say the biggest challenge that project managers have is the communication, being with their team, being with their even friend circle, because I don't know, like at the same time that I agree with you that like building these communication spaces is very important, 100%. And that's what I value a lot as well. Because we want people on board that are going to be there to contribute as if it was their business, as if it were their project or their own baby that they would take care, right? Yeah. So communication is something that is very important. But what I see sometimes is that I feel that our generation kind of avoid this kind of communication. I don't know if you agree with me, but because like at some point when the communication is not, we're not on the same page and we start having conflicts, I feel that some people, they would just kind of shut down. Yeah. Like, okay, I don't even want to stress with this. I want to just peace and love. I just want to relax or something, I don't want to get to this like outside of my comfort zone. I don't want to confront. I don't want to spend time on this. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I think that a lot of research and a lot of experiences of managers shows that the biggest problem with Gen Z, one of the biggest problems with Gen Z is that they don't know how to confront. They have a big confrontational problem, which I've even seen Simon Sinek talk about. And it is true. There is truth to it. I know lots of Gen Z like to diminish it and say, no, we're not bad. Like every generation just likes to talk negatively about the next generation. But there is some truth to it, because I think that it's very easy because of the age of social media, right? If you don't like someone, if you don't want to see someone, you just unfollow them. You just ghost them. You just stop talking to them, stop texting them. That's it. But in real life, implementing that in real life makes it very difficult for a manager to communicate with you. Because once a manager or any authority or superior tries to give you feedback, or not even feedback, just the fact that if you don't agree with someone, if you want to confront them about something, your natural instinct is to shut down and to ghost that person, or to just quit, or to just not approach that situation. Even I struggle with that. It's very, very true. It's a very valid issue that is present within our generation. So when I talk about communication skills, there are some things that we're really good at. There are some things that we need to work on. So when we talk about communication skills, we are very good at being vocal about things that, so, okay, there's two sides to this. Sometimes when we disagree with some value that the organization is abiding by, or if we disagree with something that the organization is doing, or if we disagree with something that the organization has assigned us to do, we can be vocal. We have two extremes. We can be vocal about it, but sometimes we're so vocal about it that we can disrespect the other person because we don't have this nuanced ability to say, you know, I really like this, and I think that you're doing this really well, but maybe you should not do it this way. No, if we don't like something, we are very aggressive and we say, this is not working, this is terrible, I don't like it, I don't want this. It's very natural for us to do that. Maybe social media plays a role in that. Or the other instinct is to just completely shut down and quit. So we have these two extremes, because some people say Gen Z is really vocal. Some people say Gen Z don't know how to confront. There are these two elements that are contradicting each other, because I think we just take the two extremely extreme sides.
I mean, actually, this is very, very interesting, because if you see, and I agree with you, because what I feel is that a lot of people today, they kind of, either they want to be, oh my God, this is completely wrong, or like, let's just do quiet quitting. There's actually, I was reading this term, it's called quiet quitting.
Okay.
And what this means is basically like, let's say you have a team member, and then at some point they're like, okay, I give up on this job, whatever this thing. And instead of going to the boss or kind of, oh, I resign, or I'm not going to be working here anymore, they're just like, okay, now I'm going to do the bare minimum. No, I'm going to do the bare minimum just so that you don't tell me that I'm doing anything bad or anything, so that you don't fire me. Okay. But at the same time, I'm not going to put any extra hour on this.
Interesting.
If it's 3:59, my luggage is going to be ready already, so that 4 p.m. I'm leaving here, and I don't care. And this is quite quitting. So
you think that this is only the Gen Z?
No,
I think this is quite common among other generations as well. But I think what's different about Gen Z is that they would just quit. Like, if they don't like something, they would just give up.
Yeah. But do you think that this is like for majority of the generation?
Of course, like, it's hard to generalize.
No, I'm not generalizing the majority, I mean. No, I'm just asking.
I think it also depends on cultures. I think that we've seen this, I don't want to talk too much about, I don't want to compare too much about cultures, but it also varies in cultures, because when you look at South Asian cultures, maybe Gen Z would not like a job, would want to quit, but family plays a huge impact on our decisions, a huge influence. So even if we want to quit, sometimes we don't because of what our family is saying. In Western cultures, usually they would just quit. So it's also cultural.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think what I kind of see is that our generation, at the same time, I agree with you. Either we have the extremes that will try to fight for things, maybe even, let's say, over fighting for a thing that doesn't even make sense. We also have these people that will not kind of pay, I don't know, just quite quitting, just ghosting, just ignoring the thing, right? I just wanted to dive a little bit more about this, why maybe people would do that, because I was even watching, it was Simon Sinek as well, and he was saying that this phenomenon of like quiet quitting, majority of the time would happen because people, they don't even know about themselves. They don't even know why they are in that job. And a lot of times, I mean, of course, not all of us, and majority of us are not in our dream jobs, but we kind of need to be there because we need to pay our bills, or we need to do something else. But then when we don't have that purpose of, and I don't mean like life purpose, just why I am on this specific job doing that thing, it just kind of like, what is the reason? Why would I be doing that? So then people are way more likely to just like, okay, shut off, like, okay, I don't want this and I give up on this. Okay, let me go to the next one. So we see nowadays a lot of people that just go from job to job, from relationship to relationship, from friendship to friendship, because they cannot like go for this challenge. They don't, you know what I mean? Do you agree?
I completely agree. I think that the problem is that they don't have purpose. But I think that the main issue is that they're trying to find their purpose through the organization. So they go from one job to the other because they're like, oh, let me stick to this organization. I love the impact that they're creating. I love their goals and their values. So I think this aligns with my purpose. And when you get into it, you're like, oh, I don't like it. This is not aligned with my purpose. You go on to the next. I think the problem is that Gen Z is really trying to search for what their purpose is, which has been a struggle, which leads to them going from one thing to the other and not being able to commit. So just some historical context to this, because when we look at purpose, right, in there we can divide our eras into 3 different eras. And there's the pre-modernism era, which is when during that time people used to rely a lot on faith and religion and God, and that showed them their purpose. That was a big factor in allowing them to see what their purpose is and what they should do with their life. When in the modernism era, scientific advancements became commonplace. There were lots of different advancements coming through. So then people started realizing that, okay, maybe we should start focusing a lot on research and science and scientific things, because this is our purpose. This is what will grow the world. This is what we should have a vision towards. And then in postmodernism, which is what we're living today, is that there are so many different options for us. Because when you open social media, you see someone who's religious, you see someone who's philosophical, someone who's psychological, someone who's scientific. You have all these different paths to take that you feel completely lost and directionless. So one of the issues today is that we don't know our purpose. We cannot find it because there's way too many options. And that there's also this psychological concept called the paradox of choice, which is that when you have too many options, you end up making no decision at all. So I think this is what's causing a lot of things, like not being able to commit to one job because you don't know what your purpose is. You go into one job, you're like, I don't think this is my purpose. You go on to the next, I don't think this is my purpose. You go on to the next, and you have all these array of opportunities, which is like sounds great, but in reality confuses you a lot more. So I think that what you were talking about, purpose, it is a big issue today. And the solution for it is, it's hard to think of a solution, because this is how the generation and the era has evolved into. And a lot of people say that what the solution is to adopt our old practices. But I don't think old practices can always work. Like, the reason that we are evolving and changing is that we are improving. So we need to adapt to new changes. So trying to find the balance between, I don't know what the solution is, right?
No, I know what you mean. You know one thing, like you're saying that it's the options, right? And what I see that today, like all of us, majority of us, we live in a world that maybe half of the day is online, the other half is offline.
Yeah.
And in this half offline, let's say 8 hours we are sleeping. So then we just have four more hours that are offline, let's say. And one thing that I see that's, at least for me, changed a lot is that now, before I would eat, let's say, lunch, I would watch some YouTube video. While I was, let's say, in the gym, I would be maybe just scrolling through my phone while waiting 1 minute between the sessions. And what I'm doing now is that I completely removed this. So I'm trying to not watch more YouTube videos while I'm eating, so that I can be more present. So you're more present. There. Yeah, because, we are feeding our brains with so much information that we cannot even absorb everything. Yeah. So like I would sit, watch a 10 minutes video, and then let's say maybe that was a break, right? I was working, and then I had food for 10-15 minutes a break, and then I would go back to work. But then when I'm watching something, it feels that I just I just continued working. Even though it was not work, I was looking at the screen. I was listening at someone. Yeah. And now when I just go outside to the balcony or something, and then I have my food, I kind of like, okay, it feels like 30 minutes here, just eating my food, listening to the birds or something like this. It sounds like a little bit, maybe...
No, but it's the little habits.
And this is like kind of going back, I think, to kind of answering the point. I don't think it's going back in the sense of like, oh, let's remove computers, let's remove these technologies, but rather let's go to the basics that we know that works, right? And then from there, we can kind of build a scenario or an environment that we can grow, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think that there are these little habits that you can incorporate, because as you said, you cannot just stop using your computer, stop using technology, stop using phones. Of course not. You have to incorporate that into your life, but just adding some elements to it that can improve your day to day and improve your level of connectivity to the real world, I think.
Yeah.
But still finding a purpose is still something that, you know, there's all these questions like online. Every self-improvement YouTuber or content creator talks about how to find your purpose. And why is that such a hot topic? It's because people are actually confused. So I think it's still something that is hard to answer. But I think the best advice that anyone has ever given that I've probably watched online is to try out different things.
You know, one question that comes to my mind, like for you, what is the limit of doing this job to job that you don't like until you find something that you actually, you know, love to do it?
So for me, like, this was an advice given by a friend as well. It was that if you start a project, try to commit to it for at least 6 months. And if you really see it's working through, but in those 6 months, give it your all, be so committed to it. And after those 6 months, you really see that this is something I can continue working on, then continue on it. I think that we need to give ourselves a time frame, because you cannot work on something for like 10 days and be like, this is not my purpose. No, you have to work on it for a period of time before you realize whether this can work for you or not. And so I guess this also relates back to the age of social media, which is that we always look for instant gratification. So this can be applied to our real life when we're trying to find our passion as well. And it's that we want something quickly and fast. Like I try filmmaking for 10 days. This not working out. Let's go to the next. No. So for my podcast, this was the same thing, that I was like, I need to commit to this for 6 months at least. If it works out, okay. And it did work out, and now I'm continuing.
Yeah, interesting. You know, it's because, I mean, it makes sense because a lot of people, they kind of, especially with the amount of, it's linking everything what you're saying, because we were just talking that we have a lot of options, right? And then with these options, a person will just, okay, 10 days here, 10 days here, 10 days here, and then I see what is the best. But in 10 days, you cannot, you know, assess anything. You cannot say if this is actually going to work or not. That's why like 6 months. It makes sense. I'm going to start following this. You know, so I really like this kind of thing, because it's something that all of us need to kind of stop and understand, of having this purpose of just living, let's say. Because in the morning, if you don't wake up and you kind of understand why you're doing specific things, it's way harder to build a routine. It's way harder to have your own habits. So let's say you want to go to the gym. Start going to the gym 6 a.m. every day. Of course, when you wake up, you're going to, okay, no, I want to sleep more. You're going to snooze the alarm or anything. But if you have that clear, not purpose, if you just have an idea of why you are doing that thing, right?
Yeah, for sure, I completely agree that purpose plays a huge role in motivating you. And I do think that some level of instruction or order, like having someone tell you what to do, a little bit of that is really important, because we really cannot figure out what we want to do. So if your family or your parents recommend something to you, I think you can listen to it. You can see if that works for you, because as I was saying, when you have so many options, you just end up being confused. So when you hear someone giving you some level of advice, some level of, why not try this route? I think humans need that. We do need that. And even if I think of a very small example, like when I was in Entrepreureka, when we were working on Entrepreureka, in the beginning, I assigned one of my graphic designers the task to come up with our logo. We already had a logo, but we wanted a better one. And I asked her, can you create a logo? and I wanted her to be as creative as she wanted to be. So I gave her as much freedom. I was like, I'm not going to tell her anything. I don't want to say this or that. I just want her to be creative. All I said was that these colors, I want these colors to be there, and our brand and our values of Entrepreureka is like youth and innovation and creativity. So think of that. And even though I had a picture in my head, I didn't want to share that with her. So she made one logo, and I was like, I didn't like it because it didn't meet my expectations. She made another logo. She made 3 logos, 4 logos. She made like 20 logos. I'm not even kidding. Like, I actually feel bad thinking about it because I kept asking her, no, I don't like this. I don't like that. Can you change this? Can you change? She made like 20 or more logos. And then she told me like, and then in the end, I asked for another change, and she was like, I've made like 25 logos for you and you didn't like any of them. So either you tell me like exactly what are you thinking of, or maybe you should hire another designer. And honestly, that made me think, because this was the beginning of Entrepreneureka, and I started learning that, giving too much freedom also does not work. Like, you give some room for creativity, but you also need to give them some structure. You need to give them some instructions. And I think that can be applied in our life as well when we're finding a purpose.
I'm just thinking about that 25 logos for a girl. You didn't even give like any precise feedback?
No, of course I gave feedback. I was like, it doesn't... of course I gave feedback, but okay. It was just that there were lots of different things that, I didn't like. And even though I felt like I was giving clear enough instructions, but, it just didn't work out.
This even gave me an idea of, because one thing that I always hear is a comparison. What is best? Quality or quantity? Especially when you are learning something new. So what do you think? What would you choose?
Especially when you're learning something new?
Yes.
So this is why I say that you need to commit to something for 6 months. I think that's where quality comes in, because in the beginning, you know nothing about what you're doing. You will be bad at it. Like, you will for sure be terrible at it. So if you make your decision on whether you want to continue within the first month, then that's a terrible decision because you are really bad at it. And so in this case, quality plays a role because you need 6 months to improve, to get better, get better at your craft before you can make a decision. So in that sense, quality is important, but quantity plays some role, because a lot of times you work on something for 6-7 months, it doesn't work out. You have to go to the next. And I just think that if you really think it's not working out after 6 months, you should make a decision fast. Yeah. Like, you give yourself the deadline and then make a decision fast, move on to the next. Because, for example, Entrepreneureka was great. Like, it was so much fun. But I just knew that I don't see this moving forward. Yeah. Even though we partnered with some cool companies, it was so much fun. There were so many cool students who joined the team. But in the end, I wanted to do something else.
Yeah.
Even though I worked on it for
the
2 years.
next chapter is done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying this because I was like, that's something like, I'm a strong believer that quantity leads to the quality.
Good point.
If you're starting something new, don't focus on the quality. It will be bad either way. You need to rather focus on the quantity, because after you created 10 videos that you edited by let's say 30 minutes each, you're going to have better videos. Like the 11th one will be better than your first one that you spent 10 hours to edit. Right?
Yeah, I answered it in a way of finding your passion, quality or 100%. Quantity. But that makes sense that when you commit to something, in that case, that's quantity. Like, you need to be producing.
Yeah, but even in these 6 months that you committed, I think you're going to be able to benefit better if you kind of go in the quantity thing.
Yeah.
Because if you start, I'm going to wait 6 months to launch something, I'm going to start and launch a business, right? I'm going to wait 6 months to launch my first product. No. Go and launch your first one maybe in the beginning with the first month. And then on the second month, you launch a second version. The third month, a third version. So then in the end of the 6 months, you launched 6 different projects, right? Yeah. So then you don't have just the first one, but rather you have the 6th one, which had some feedback, some like your customers had some ideas, you could see what were the flaws, and then you fix it and everything, right?
It's just making sure that you're actually implementing the feedback
Yeah,
you're getting
yeah.
on time and quickly within those 6 months.
Yeah.
Just being fast.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted for us to kind of dive a little bit more, something that I know you like, leadership, like to talk about. And you have, like, as I was saying before, like all of us, we kind of have experienced leadership in a lot of ways. Either if you're the leader, not only in big scenarios, like if you are just with your friends and you need to select a restaurant, maybe you are the leader in that scenario. But at the same time, if you are like one of, I don't know, leading a team in a project, in a company, you're also the leader, right? But I wanted to ask from you, what is the definition of leadership that you have in your mind?
I feel like I'm going back to my leadership course. What is the definition of a leader? I think that for me, I've always said this, that a leader is someone who can create other leaders. And I've always said this because I think that in order to create other leaders, you need to drive action. You need to, all of those things, the generic things that everyone talks about. You need to drive action, drive performance. You need to make them go towards a vision and a goal. So all of those things come underneath that. But in overall, what you're doing is you're creating other leaders as well. That's leadership for me.
Yeah. And how do you see that this is impacting like your relationship with your team members or something like around it?
Yeah, I think I remember like when, I'm going back to high school when I was like the school president and I was in the school student council, and that's a leadership role as well. And what I did was I started different departments. So I started like this department of arts, this department of marketing and social media. And I started recruiting students because there are so many talented people in the student population who don't become student council members. But I still wanted them to participate in our events. So I created these departments, and all the best artists, they were in Department of Art. All the best social media people, they were in Department of Social Media. And what they did was that in all those events that we would have, the artists managed all the decorations, all the decor. So some of the events we had were stunningly decorated. And then the social media, like we had a lot of social media coverage during that period because there was this department. And then after I graduated, I left, and now I see all those students in those departments now applying to be in student council members. And before they wouldn't. Maybe they were too scared, maybe they had some level of fear or insecurity, but just that motivation, that push led them to applying to be in the student council. And this is such a small example, but you can see that when you are a leader who's actually empowering other people, those people start being more proactive and they want to take initiative and leadership positions.
Yeah, I think it's because like nowadays we kind of have this wrong perception of what a leader is. So you go to a company, you go to the CEO's office, and then you have that leader for you, right? But maybe this is just like an authority that you have that is towards you. Let's say you are an employee of this company, and then you have the CEO. He's your leader, but in this scenario, maybe you don't trust him. You don't follow what he says.
Yeah.
He leads you because of this authority relationship that we have there, but he's not leading in reality, right?
Yeah.
Because as you said, like I agree, like leaders, they are kind of, you cannot lead anyone like just you, right? You are the leader, but who are you leading, right?
Yeah.
So this relationship between leadership and the followers, it's something that is very important, right?
Yeah, and like this goes back to the idea. This goes back to the idea of followership. That every leader has a follower. A leader cannot exist without their followers. So it's important to acknowledge what's followership as well. How can you be a good follower? What it takes for a leader to create a good follower. So I think there's lots of new studies coming up about followership as well. So as you were saying, like, when you lead, you're leading a group of people. They're individuals, they're people, human beings. So you need to acknowledge the way they work as well. But of course, not all leadership styles work in all scenarios as well. we talk a lot about this, that like when you talk about military, you cannot have someone who is like, oh, like you're in danger and the leader is asking you, what do you think we should do? Like, obviously you don't want someone like that. You want someone who's giving you orders, do this, take action very quickly. But then there are some environments where you need someone asking for feedback and, encouraging creativity. So it depends on the scenario as well.
Yeah, but do you think that leadership is kind of taught in a wrong way today? I mean, to be honest, like it's even hard to say because we actually don't have classes, or I mean, very few people actually study, because leadership is like you need to study, right? To actually be a good leader, you need to be a student of leadership.
Yeah, true.
Because like let's say there is no expert leader. Leaders are always learning. The same way there's no expert parent. Imagine like, I was born as an expert. What do you mean?
The
like,
best mother in the world.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the best mother in the world. What would be the definition? The one that is actually like everyday listening, everyday talking.
Learning.
It's a two-way relationship, right?
Yeah,
So,
I think that when it comes to leadership, when you say that, are we being taught the wrong way? I think a lot of people it's not that we're being taught the wrong way. It's just that we're not being taught. Like, we don't actually take classes. We don't take lots of courses on leadership. And even if we do, I think it's too theoretical. Like, the best way to learn is just practical experience. Like, even for me, I cannot really say a lot of things about leadership because I'm still learning. Like, I don't know what the best leader is. So I think it's not, I don't think leadership is really something that you can just teach. Like, you cannot take a course on and just automatically learn.
100%,
You can learn some tactics, some techniques, some studies which help in your behavior. But really, it's through practical experience.
Yeah, actually, what I heard one day, I was watching this podcast with Simon Sinek, as you mentioned before, the TEDx guy, and he was saying that the problem with leadership nowadays is that we always have this concept related to male characteristics.
Okay.
So when you imagine about a leader, you imagine about an aggressive person, a decisive person, the person that would open the door and start yelling at everyone, let's do this, let's go. And then, but in reality, how leaders should be taught, or how we should imagine about leaders, are with more female characteristics, in the sense of listening, caring, understanding, empathetic. So this kind of, what we see and what we imagine usually is these male characteristics, but in reality, what a good leader would be maybe a mix of both, if not more towards the female characteristics, if you can say so.
Yeah, I think it's a balance of both. You need feminine and masculine traits to be a good leader. And you cannot always be someone who's aggressive and who's giving orders. You also have to be someone who listens and is empathetic. So as you said, that's very true. Like, even some of the best countries, economic wise, are run by women. Like, for example, Finland, even New Zealand. When COVID happened, the countries that managed COVID the best were countries run by women. Like New Zealand, it had like 0 cases. So I mean, of course, it's not to say that all women are great leaders, but it's just to say that, this is something to think about, that feminine traits are also important in leadership. So I think that's a very good point that you make about, I think that it's not that we are learning more about leadership, it's that we are identifying how not to be a leader, and then learning from that. We're unlearning the wrong leadership tactics. So yeah.
People kind of have this idea, right? Especially because we're not taught. It's just like by the examples. So maybe when we see this, especially like on TV and on the West, right? Have this president that they would come and then everyone would be quiet and we would listen to them. They would be very concise, precise, and then even yell if needed, and then they would leave. And then done. That is the leader image that we have. But on the other hand, let's say we see the leaders in the UAE that they are, like, you can find them on coffee shops.
Yeah.
And they're just there chilling, relaxing with their friends, their family, and there's a video actually that I saw the other day on Twitter. I think was Sheikh Mohammed, I don't know.
Is it about the phones?
No, but he was in Abu Dhabi,
Okay.
and he was like just parked like on the red light, and then like the guy is here driving on Nissan Sunny. Then he looks to the side, is the
It's the president of the country.
Yeah, like hello. So like this is a leader, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? This is like the kind of being there. If not like talking with everyone, but like trying, listening, improving, listening what other people need to say, right? And
Yeah.
improving from there.
Yeah, even I was watching this video where he was talking about the fact that the president has two phones, has two numbers. One is obviously private and one is public that every individual has. Like everyone in the country has access to. They could call him or send him a message through that number. And that's insane. Like this is the president of a country who is giving you access, direct access to communicate with him.
Who did this?
I'm not sure. I think it's the current president. I'm not exactly sure.
Where?
I watched this video of UAE.
Oh,
I'm talking about UAE.
okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about UAE. Yeah, so it's
That's
just
crazy.
And this is true leadership. Like you need. It's not just you. Like when you're running a country, you need to remember you're running a country full of people, and you're all these rules, policies you're creating are for people, are for the betterment of the people that are living in the country. So I think it's every leadership of the UAE has shown that their main vision, their main goal is just the betterment of the citizens who live in the country.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I mean, we were talking about like, let's say the leadership related as well to the followership, right? Because in every leadership scenario, we have this relationship, right? So I wanted to ask you, like in your experience, especially leading these teams and everything, what has been like the main challenge that you experienced yourself in this kind of relationship with the followers, or when you had to, follow someone?
Wait, sorry, can you repeat your question?
Like what are the challenges associated with this leadership style, let's say this leadership and followership?
Okay.
And the challenges, I mean, like relating to the followers, let's say, maybe we have communication problems, or maybe we have not, our expectations are not aligned. So, you know what I mean?
So you're asking me what communication challenges I faced with?
No, what are the challenges that you have as a leader?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that I've mentioned earlier as well, which is one of my main challenges, is being both open to creativity, but also giving them enough instruction to work. So I think finding the balance between the two, where you're giving them orders, I don't like the word, but you're giving them instructions, you're telling them exactly what to do, but you're also leaving room for creativity and improvement and new ideas and things along those lines. So for me, that balance is really important. A lot of times I do too much of the freedom, where I just give them so much freedom that they don't do anything in the end, or they do something that will not work, so they have to do it again and again, and it's counterproductive and it's inefficient. So finding the balance between the two has been my biggest challenge. What about for you? Actually, you also run your company.
I mean, the biggest challenge that I have,
running teams.
I think the biggest challenge that I see, especially, I mean, for me, the biggest challenge is the communication.
Okay.
And the expectations and the alignment of expectations. I think this is one of the biggest ones, because like from day one, when I start working with someone, like I kind of tell them, look, that's what we are expecting. That's what I expect. That's what you should expect, so that we are on the same page. Because if we have like a common starting point, in the end, let's say Monday, all of us came together, and then we decided that by Friday, these are the tasks that will be done. Right? So then if you arrive on Friday and the tests are not done, okay, why? What was the problem? What happened here? So I think one challenge is to have these expectations, because as we were discussing before, especially when you are working with young people, when we are not in the same page, we're not gonna give, let's say, maybe not everyone is gonna give 150%. Like when you have that deadline on a Friday night, Friday evening, that all of our friends are out, but because you have to do that, you stay at home by yourself and do it.
I think that, I know we were talking about, this is a problem with young people, but what I do know is that when someone in Gen Z, when a young person knows exactly their passion, knows their goal, knows their vision, then they'll be crazy about it. Then they're really committed, then they go all in. It's just that most Gen Z people don't know. their passion. That's why we see this pattern emerge of confusion, of not being able to commit. Because I think that Gen Z can be super committed to one particular job or one particular role if they really know what their passion is or what their purpose is.
Like imagine in this scenario, like you have a job and then you also have this passion on the side.
Okay.
How do you deal with it? How are you like, what is the word? Like, how can you at the same time, not manage, but how can you, because you have an agreement with this first one, right? But you also have this other thing that you spend maybe majority of your times, majority of your hours. So then maybe at some point, because you're spending like 4 or 5 hours per day on your side hustle, let's say, the main thing, it became kind of, you're not performing at your best. So how do you manage these two things?
I think that because if your goal is to eventually make your side hustle your main hustle, then I think it's understandable that one occupation's, the commitment towards one role is less compared to the other, as long as that side hustle is actually growing. Like even if I think about, even though I don't have 2 jobs, but I am studying, I'm in university and I have the podcast, and I try to commit more time to the podcast than I do to my university. And if it's not the same as having 2 jobs, but it's having 2 commitments. And in the beginning, I was fully committed to my university. That was all that I had, and I was very committed to it. I did great. I continue to try to do great, but you only have 24 hours, and you need to decide what percentage of that you want to spend on. And for me, I think that the podcast can give me more than what my university can give me. Then I will commit more to my podcast.
Yeah. I mean, makes sense for me too. Same thing. I think like I wanted to explore, like before we end, I wanted to explore mainly 2 areas still related to these ones.
Okay.
The first one is that we're talking about, in the end of the day, is people, right? Because as we're saying, like leadership, followership, or in a team, or just in your job, in your podcast, or talking with people. So I just wanted to kind of ask you your opinion on this. Like, do you think it's possible to succeed when you don't have the correct environment around you in terms of people? Let's say you are in a vibe of like, okay, let's go, let's work and grow, and let me rock this podcast to 1 million listeners every month. But then you have some friends, your close friends maybe, that are on a different vibe, maybe going more to parties or go to do something like this. So do you think that it's possible for you to kind of succeed in this scenario?
I think that people who are not aligned with what you're doing can be one of the biggest hindrances to your success. I think they can actually be an obstacle to your success, because there are people that you are going to talk to almost every day. They're people that you're going to spend some amount of time with every single day. And if there are people who are taking you away from this particular goal that you have, then I think it will be a problem with your success. Because I think that even when there was this research study done, I remember reading about how there was these impoverished communities, these poor communities, and when they were looking into individuals that were able to come out of that poor neighborhood and become successful and become great, the common pattern that they saw was that there was a really good teacher with all of them. There was one person in their life, maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was a parent, one person in their life that played a huge role in changing their trajectory, changing their path. So people play a big role in determining your success. It's not everything, but it is a huge factor. So the more you surround, like, you have to make a sacrifice, even if they're really close friends. Sometimes you have to make a sacrifice that these are people that they're great, and everything, but maybe they're partying too much, and that can affect you. You have to start spending less time with them. There is a sacrifice involved. So if you're asking me that if people can be an obstacle to your success, if they're not aligned with what your goal is, yes, they can definitely be an obstacle.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. And then there is even a follow-up question related to this. So when do you give up on someone, let's say? Especially more, I mean, let's say, maybe not in a friendship, maybe in a friendship, but maybe in the workplace as well. let's say in your team, in your so hard this word, this name, this company, this organization that you had, okay? Like when you had to give up on someone, like what is the limit so that you can kind of give up on this? Just to give some more context
Like
to the
a friend, you
conversation.
mean?
Yeah, a friend or a team member. I want to ask this because just to give some context, we see a lot of people, like something that is very important is feedback, right? So let's say you have someone on board and then maybe they're not going the correct way, but you're giving them constant feedback. But then there is a period of time that's like, okay,
It's not working.
Done. It's not working for you. It's not working for me. It's not working for us together. In this project or in this friendship or in any kind of relationship, being work related or anything. So when do you think is that moment of, okay, done, giving up on someone? And why would you do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a very vague answer, but for me, it's just a feeling like you just know that this is not working. I think that when, there are certain friends around you that are great, are really nice people, but maybe every time you're around them, you don't feel like you're growing. You don't feel like can contribute to my growth. You don't feel like you're helping each other grow either. So when you see that pattern emerge, when you constantly feel that every time you meet them, versus when you meet someone else who is very like growth minded, and every time you talk to them you get so much energy and you're like, I want to work now, I want to work today, you can see the difference and you can tell that, okay, maybe I need to start spending more time with these type of individuals. So I think eventually you just naturally realize. When it comes to workplace, I think it's a little different in terms of the timing. I think that you may take longer with friends, and it's reasonable to take longer with friends because they're your friends. But a lot of people say this is not from my experience because I'm really bad at this, but when it comes to workplace, a lot of people say that you take time in hiring, you hire slow, but you fire fast. And this, I always hear this, everyone talks about this. For me personally, this has been something I'm not the best at. I think hiring is something I take time in. I do proper research, interview, but firing is something I also take time in, as in I feel like I will have to give this person another chance. Eventually you have to fire the person.
Yeah.
So I think with companies and with friendships, it's different.
Yeah, there's something interesting because what I see is that, of course, hiring, you need to put a lot of process there. You need to understand that person. But the reality is that you just understand who is the real Mahreen, let's say, when she's on board. After that first 2 weeks or the first week in the office that like everyone's working together. So then you can actually get an idea of who is that person. And not just in terms of work, because especially for us in the company, like what we value a lot is if the person is aligned with our culture. Because if the team member is the best one in the world, but is not aligned with our values and with our culture, it's not going to work. And and sometimes this can sound like, okay, just like culture, values, but in reality it's not, because for example, in the company we have some we created a DNA presentation.
Pre-DNA.
Yes,
Okay.
pre-DNA. And this DNA is basically like if Esprit was a person, how it would look like. So we can kind of see and like, okay,
Wow.
does it make sense or not? So one of the things there, for example, is that we don't, that we have there, and I tell everyone, is that we don't have arms of dinosaur arms. Because just imagine like this, the dinosaur arms.
The small arm.
Yeah, and then like, oh, you have a challenge. With your small arms, you don't do anything. You wait for someone else to come and fix it. Or you wait a week to see if the problem will clear up. No, what we do, we go and we fix it ourselves. The other one is that our office time is until 4 p.m. And then we say, one thing that we don't do is to leave and pack our luggage at 3:59. So that it's incorporating the culture that, I mean,
You're committed.
Yeah, it's 4 p.m. But if needed, and it's always needed almost, we're going to stay a little bit of time. Not because, it's simply because we need to do something.
Yeah,
There's some
it's not that you're
challenges.
forced to do it. It's that you just naturally have this, instinct that I have to work.
So it's even something funny, like whenever there is a new person on board, and then they are in the office, and then let's say it was Monday, 4 p.m., they're like, okay guys, thank you very much, nice meeting you, I come back tomorrow. Like everyone like just starts like, wow, good job. Like everyone starts clapping and everything, like, yes, see you tomorrow. Because you see like that person the first day already left. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He's not
yeah.
there for the extra mile. He's not there for the over delivery, you know.
But then do they get paid extra?
Of course. You know, what we do is that we have usually we rely a lot on the variable. And this is basically like based on your goals, based if you achieved or not. So if you don't want, if you want to go home 4 p.m., it's okay.
Yeah, okay.
But then you're not
so
going
you
to be
are
able
getting
to,
paid.
yeah,
I
but
was
then
just
you're not
saying
going to be able to grow as you expected or
Yeah.
something, right?
Yeah.
And then to be honest, like we've just, we always keep the people around that they want more, because we know that this is the only way for our company to actually grow exponentially is if we have the best people around us. If we create the best leaders within ourselves, within our company, you know,
Yeah.
we don't have people that, oh, they're just going to be listening.
Yeah.
Majority of the time is, okay, we have this question, no one knows the answer, so what do? Go to YouTube, go and read some books,
Just
learn.
learning.
Yeah,
just
learn by yourself, and then
value of
bring us
learning.
the answers so that everyone can know now, right?
Love that.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I
mean,
love that. I love this idea of Spreed DNA. Like,
Yeah.
if Spreed was a person, how would it be? I love that.
Yeah.
Super.
And you
creative.
know, it's something that like this kind of a systems, it's a two-way hand. Let's say if someone comes to you and asks for feedback, and you give them the feedback, you spend 2 hours on a meeting telling them what to do, what to not do. But if they don't take action, if they don't do the first step, it's not gonna work. You can do everything like as a friend to help to help someone else, but if that person is not taking charge and is not actually doing by themselves, there's no one that can tell you what to do.
For sure. I
right?
think proactivity is so important. And if you're actually passionate about something, you can tell by how proactive that person is. Proactivity is a direct, I don't know if this is research based, but I really think that proactivity has a direct correlation with passion, like, or commitment. Like the more committed that you just naturally become more proactive.
Yeah. Why do you think that is important then to talk about this confusion of choices in business scenarios, let's say?
So I think that it's not just in our real life that we're seeing this confusion, but we can see that even in how businesses interact with consumers. So for example, there are lots of research studies that show that businesses that have menus, or restaurants that have menus with lots of different options, lots of variety. It sounds so cool that, oh, this restaurant has so many different options to choose from, but actually it leaves consumers even more confused, and it makes it harder for them to make a decision. And when they do make a decision, they just feel tired. It's called decision fatigue. They feel tired because of the energy they're consuming and choosing. This happens to me a lot. And versus when you look at restaurants with little options, but you can make a decision faster and you have a better time in that restaurant, you have a more positive experience. Like if you look at Five Guys, we were talking about how Five Guys just has a couple of options, just a cheeseburger, double cheeseburger, I don't know, like a 3-4 options. And you make a decision really quick, it's fast, and you have a great time. And so not just in menus, but even with pictures, even though it's not related to choice, but one thing that Five Guys does different, I was watching this video about what's the difference between Five Guys and McDonald's. And a lot of people say that, it's the ingredients, the quality of the burgers, and all of these things may, of course, play a role. But one of the key factors in which Five Guys was able to charge higher than McDonald's is that they removed pictures from their menus. So when you remove pictures from your menu, it is aligned with people having a higher perceived value of that restaurant. When there are no pictures, they think it's a more fancy restaurant. It's just psychological. You think it's a more fancy restaurant, you perceive it with a higher value. And so because of that, restaurants, you may notice now, like now when you go into restaurants, that if the more high-end restaurants you go to, the less pictures you'll see. So that's also an interesting thing to think about. And I was watching this video about why this can occur. This is a historical context. I'm not sure if it's 100% accurate, but I'm pretty sure it has some reasoning behind it, is that historically, richer people were the ones who were able to read. So they didn't need pictures. So obviously the restaurants they would go to, those higher end restaurants would just remove pictures because they were targeting rich people who know how to read. Whereas people in lower, I don't know how to say, lower income individuals, they didn't know how to read, so they needed those pictures. So naturally, restaurants who targeted those individuals had to put pictures in the menu. So it's interesting to see how that has continued today, even though a lot of people, more people know how to read.
100%, 100%. I wanted to ask you something related to the podcast, because this is like your new kind of, right? Like 6-7 months that you are in on this. How do you see this going, like towards, like what are your kind of expectations, let's say, or your goals for this year?
Yeah, so I think this year I want to do a lot more. I think the podcast has brought this new array of learnings to my life in terms of culture and society and all these interesting topics that I'm learning so much more and more about. But I want to take it further by, my goal is that I would host 2 community events this year. And by that, I want to start hosting events. And I really believe that in order to learn, the best way to learn is through people, is through having conversations with people. Conversational learning is one of the best tools of learning. It's based on science as well. Like if you look at the science of learning, it talks a lot about how when you just read something, you will think that you've memorized it, but probably a little while later you've forgotten it. But when you read something and then talk to someone about it, it will stay in your memory. So that's why I want to start hosting events that promote conversations, where we have like booths where there's question cards and strangers meet, have conversations. I want to have events like live podcast shows where we also talk with the audience and with the guest. So hopefully events, will start hosting big events this year. Other than that, I just want to improve the level of topics that we talk about. I think that we've touched a lot on culture, but we can bring a different angle to it. Like I want to see the historical side of culture as well. Like why are South Asians the way they are today? Because of history, because of colonization, because of this or that. Why? And not just history, but psychology. What are the psychological reasons that South Asians like to gossip? You know, just an example. So I want to bring these different angles to the podcast, which would be very interesting. Yeah, that's
awesome. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for being here. I really hope that you guys could learn something. Just a reminder, all of those clips that you see on our social medias are done 100% by our AI tool. So if you are interested, if you're a podcast host, if you have a personal brand or anything, just check out our website and then send us a message that we can talk there. Thank you very much for our time.
Including mine. All the clips are generated for me as well. Yes.
Yeah, so all the clips that you see on her profile as well
are generated by
Spreed. Over in 6-7 months, we generated over 50-60 million views already, and now your accounts are reaching to 100,000 followers almost, right? If not more, when you combine everything.
Yes.
So anyway, but you are doing great, and I'm very happy for this. So thank you very much for being here, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me. I loved it. Thank you.